everyone, my name is Kira. I'm an English teacher, and in this short video we're going to be looking at a question B which follows the comprehension section of English paper 1, and this is a feature article from the exam from 2013. So let's have a look at the sample. Fairly short and sweet. It's a nice sample, but it's not particularly lengthy. However, it does get to the point quite quickly, and it does feature some really nice stylistic techniques and some interesting kind of linguistic features as well that would be typical of a feature article, and we're going to see a few of those in the main body of the essay. Now, firstly, let's look at the question and see what areas we need to focus on. So as always, I talk about the gaps. That's the genre, audience, purpose and style. So firstly, what is the genre of this piece? Well, the question Bs are always a good variety. It could be a letter or an introduction or an article or a short talk or speech. There's lots of different huge mix of things that it could be. So in this case, it tells you straight away it's a feature article. So we should be thinking about things that we would typically see in a feature article. We know that it's subjective rather than objective, which is going to be important for the type of language we're going to use, and also for the tone and the approach we're going to use for the article. Secondly, then the audience. Well, it's a series of newspaper articles, but we should also say that further down in the question, it's to talk about must-see attractions for tourists. So it's people who read newspapers, really. So it's a fairly broad audience and a fairly broad readership, but specifically it'll be people who are looking for tourist destinations. So generally it'll be newspaper readers and tourists. And the purpose then, as we mentioned, it's trying to describe a must-see attraction and trying to sort of convince tourists that that's why they should go to see this must-see attraction and maybe explain why. So it's kind of like working for the tourist board. You know, you're trying to encourage people to come and visit this particular tourist site. So immediately we know if that's our purpose, we're going to need to engage some persuasive language and really try to convince our reader that this particular place is worth a visit. So that's something, and immediately now we should have an idea before we start into the writing of the actual article. We know what we're trying to achieve, so we know how we're going to achieve it by using persuasive language, and we know who we're trying to target as well, and what we're trying to do, the feature article. So the introduction then. Again, fairly short, but a nice opening, and immediately we're talking about the informative style. The fact that this student has decided to choose County Clare and Ayr and particular sites within the county, but immediately saying things about the UNESCO World Heritage, you know, these particular sites means that obviously this is informative, it's factual, that this person has done the research. So they're not just saying, oh, there's some nice cliffs, or oh, there's this really nice area with loads of rock. You know, it's kind of, it's showing that it's factual. And that's really important, because obviously the tourists are going to want to know exactly why they should go somewhere, but you know what exactly the place is. So factual, informative, really important. Obviously, you want to address the question in that first line. Discovering the culture of Ireland when you visit County Clare in the heart of the west coast of Ireland is an experience not to be missed. So straight away we know we're talking about County Clare, but we're talking about discovering culture, and we're talking about tourism and how much, you know, enjoyment you can get from maybe visiting this place. Again, we mentioned earlier about the persuasive writing and the persuasive style, and straight away in the introduction we see several examples of it. So this place is not to be missed. Everyone is entertained. It's remarkable, spectacular and astonishing. Really nice kind of almost hyperbolic descriptions there, kind of, you know, they're almost superlatives. They're the best, you know, they're spectacular, astonishing, remarkable. You know, it's really just really convincing, really persuasive. They're not just nice and kind of pretty to look at. They're really, you know, top end of the scale. So really nice descriptions here, and a really nice way to persuade your reader as well. So we're quite convinced at this point that County Clare is where to go. So now we're going to look at the specifics, the actual examples of where she has or he has chosen as the tourist sites. So when we're structuring ideas, we're going to look at maybe three main areas, and this student has picked Cliffs of Moher, the Burn and Spanish Point, and fairly short points on each, but they're well structured, and again we'll be looking out for those features and that style in each. Putting them together then, we have to make sure we organise the points, that we link them together nicely, and we're always keeping in mind the question. So in the question we're told we need to convince people to go and visit these tourist sites and explain why we personally think these particular sites are the best. So that's what we mean by keeping the question in mind, keeping your audience in mind, keeping your purpose in mind, and always remembering the style and your features that you want to include. So first and foremost, Cliffs of Moher, and you can see it is only a fairly short paragraph, but it does the job. It hits on all the right points fairly quickly. Straight away we've got persuasive language, extraordinary panoramic views, windswept. You know, again, really nice descriptions here. It's not bland, it's particularly exciting, it's really nicely described. And then it's informative and factual. So we want to know, like, what can you do on the Cliffs of Moher? Well, you can visit the colonies of puffins, you can see the schools of dolphins, you can go to a visitor centre, and they're Europe's tallest cliffs. So again, there's the facts and the information, and that's just as important, because obviously as tourists, you're going to want to know, why should you bother going to visit these sites? Like, what's so special about them? Moving on to our second point then, we've got the Burren. And again, it's another short and sweet point, but we hit on the major important things fairly quickly. So the persuasive writing or the persuasive language, again, really nice descriptions like vistas instead of saying a view. And it's otherworldly, so it's not like anything you've seen before. It's totally different. It's out of this world. It's vast, as if it kind of goes on forever. So again, using, employing these kinds of these words and this type of vocabulary and this descriptive language can be so effective when you're trying to persuade your readers of something. And then again, we mentioned the factual things. Well, tourists want to know what are the things they can do, what's the detailed information. Well, it's obviously near the Aran Islands, there's rare flora and fauna, and then obviously there's underground caves, hiking, adventure centres, etc. So again, it's got all the information, but it's not just listing it off and saying here's what you can do. We also kind of incorporating the persuasive writing with the informative writing, which is really, really effective. Third tourist site then mentioned was Spanish Point. Again, fairly short, but everything that's needed is there. Firstly, there's an authoritative tone, like this person speaking is speaking from experience and from kind of expertise. And that's what you want, really. Again, if you're going to persuade or convince somebody, you have to be persuaded yourself. So using this imperative, unwind in the evening, it's when you give instruction or when you're telling somebody to do something, be careful. It's really effective because somebody's reading it and saying, well, this person obviously knows what they're talking about, that they're an expert in this area, or, they've been here and they have, they're kind of offering advice. So that tone can be, again, another effective persuasive technique. And then we got further descriptive language as well, like nice use of adjectives. So fresh, lively, open stove. Again, just talking about where to get the nice Guinness and where, the different pubs that you can get and different kinds of the open stove, coal fire, and, kind of the atmosphere around some of the pubs, and obviously the fresh seafood and everything. So this is more general. It's not a specific, one tourist thing. It's kind of the whole area and what's nice and the nice places you can visit and pubs and restaurants and things like that. So it kind of has it all. You've got your sort of informative, interesting site. You have the Cliffs of Moher, and then you've got down the road only, the Spanish Point as an area where people can kind of relax and enjoy themselves and more recreationally and things like that. So there are three main points. I would assume this student is probably from County Clare, if not, certainly really loves it down there. And it shows in their writing. So, again, pick a place that pick a place that you personally, would be a fan of, because then it comes through in your writing. And those are the three main areas in County Clare. So we'll now look at the conclusion to see has the student kind of wrapped everything up. And again, it says, your trip to Ireland would not be complete without a visit to the heart of the West Coast. Okay, so it doesn't matter where you are in Ireland, really, that the West Coast, or specifically County Clare, is where it's at. So again, it's a nice way to wrap everything up. And obviously there's more to say about County Clare, but those three specific areas will be plenty for your 50-mark question B. So again, some lovely adjectives in the conclusion. It's stunning natural beauty, the meandering coastline, and its unique and windswept kind of landscape. So again, really lovely use of adjectives that we've seen throughout. So it's a nice way of finishing off. And it's emotive, the heart of the West Coast, and it's not to be missed. Well, we had not to be missed earlier in the piece as well. But again, it shows that it's something that, you'll be almost sad if you don't get to go. You'll be very disappointed. So it really kind of pulls on the heartstrings, and it's emotive in the sense that it gets an emotional response from the reader. So all in all, each of these points have been fairly short. They haven't gone into huge detail. However, it is only the 50-mark question B. It follows the comprehension. It's not supposed to be a lengthy composition. It's more about, actually getting your purpose and answering the specifics of the question. And this student has done that. They've kept the genre in mind. They've thought about their audience. That's the tourists, the people reading the newspaper. It's very much for everyone. It's not excluding any particular reader. But the purpose is really strong here. It's informative and persuasive. It's telling you about what the County Clare and the different places to visit, and then it's telling you why you should visit them, and that if you didn't, you'd be missing out. So all of those things have been incorporated. So it is a very nice answer overall. That brings us back to the sample. So for the sample version and for an annotated version also, you can go to studyclix.ie.